The morning my fence got destroyed started with the sound of chainsaws and diesel engines. The kind of noise that doesn't just wake you up, it pulls you out of bed with a feeling in your gut that something is very wrong. I remember stepping onto the porch half awake, coffee still warm in my hand, and seeing a bulldozer rolling straight through my family's fence like it was made of cardboard. Not just any fence. Those posts had been cut by my great-grandfather in 1924 back when men survived the Dust Bowl by stubbornness and prayer. And standing there beside the machine, filming herself like she was capturing some kind of historic victory, was Brenda Maxworth, president of the Riverside Estates HOA. Her husband Dale climbed out of the bulldozer grinning while the engine coughed diesel smoke into the morning air. Brenda held up her phone and announced to the camera with a smug smile, "Finally, the illegal ranch barrier is gone. Public access to the Riverside Community Trail is restored." Public access to a trail that had belonged to my family for a century. Splintered oak lay scattered across the pasture while she celebrated like she had just liberated territory in a war. What she didn't realize, what she hadn't even bothered to check, was that she had just destroyed property belonging to a family that had been documenting every inch of this land since before her subdivision existed. And more importantly, every road in her shiny new neighborhood ran across land my family still legally owned. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because Brenda Maxworth didn't wake up one day and randomly decide to bulldoze a ranch fence. That moment was just the final explosion in a 5-year war she thought she had already won. My name is Jake Whitmore. I'm 52 years old, a third-generation rancher, and I've lived on the same 200 acres of Texas grassland my entire life. My great-grandfather carved this ranch out of nothing during the Dust Bowl. He cut the oak fence post by hand, dug the cattle wells himself, and laid down a dirt trail connecting our ranch house to the north pasture. That trail became the backbone of our land. Cattle moved across it. Generations of Whitmores rode horses along it. And eventually it became a legal easement that passed through neighboring property when pieces of the surrounding farmland were sold over the decades. For nearly 100 years, nobody questioned that arrangement, until Riverside Estates appeared. In 2019, a developer from Dallas bought the cotton farm next door and built 200 luxury houses practically overnight. The subdivision brochure called it heritage living, which always made me laugh a little, because the only real heritage left in that area was my ranch. The developer designed the main entrance road for the neighborhood straight across the old cattle trail. But legally, that wasn't a problem because our easement rights had been recorded with the county since 1987. Rock-solid paperwork, at least until Brenda Maxworth moved in. Brenda was 48, recently relocated from Oklahoma, and had the particular personality type that thrives inside homeowners associations. Within months, she had become HOA president, and almost immediately she decided my ranch was the biggest threat to her idea of suburban perfection. First, it was complaints. The smell of cattle ruined their wine tastings. My tractors were visually disruptive. My roosters crowed too loudly at sunrise, which in rural Texas is like complaining that water is too wet. I tried being friendly. Sarah, my wife, used to say kindness could smooth over most neighbor problems. We brought Brenda homemade beef jerky when they first moved in, offered to help plant trees along the property line. Brenda took that kindness as weakness. The harassment slowly escalated. Facebook posts complaining about farm odors, letters about property values, then official complaints about my equipment being visible from the road. But the real turning point came in 2020. That was a year Sarah got sick. Cancer. Sudden, aggressive, unforgiving. While I was spending my weeks driving her to chemo treatments in Houston, Brenda hired her brother-in-law Marcus to resurvey the boundary between our properties. Magically, my century-old fence had suddenly moved 15 feet on a HOA land. Survey markers that had been sitting there since Eisenhower was president were declared inaccurate. 3 days later, landscaping crews started planting shrubs where my fence used to stand. Brenda stood there supervising the work with that same satisfied smile. Community improvement, she called it. The morning Sarah died, I walked out to the mailbox and found a note taped to it. Condolences on your loss. Please address the fence encroachment issue immediately to avoid legal action. That was the moment something inside me stopped trying to be polite. Not anger. Anger burns hot and fast. Or replaced it was colder. Patience. Instead of fighting Brenda, I started researching. County records, survey archives, historical deeds. And that's when I found the first piece of the puzzle. My great-grandfather hadn't just owned the ranch. He had created the Whitmore Family Trust in 1924, and that trust retained ownership of every road carved from the original ranch land, including the road network now running through Riverside Estates. That meant something very interesting. Brenda's entire neighborhood had been driving across Whitmore Trust property for 5 years without realizing it. But I didn't reveal that information. Not yet, because Brenda kept escalating. First, she tried to steal land with fake surveys. Then one morning, I discovered my irrigation line to the north pasture had been cut during one of the HOA's landscaping projects. She claimed the pipe was illegal infrastructure. Then she went even further. She installed a massive automated security gate across my access road. A steel gate with cameras and keypads, designed to lock me out of my own cattle trail. Installed directly on land she didn't own. That was when my daughter Emma came home from Texas A&M for winter break. Emma had been studying agricultural law. When she saw the old trust documents, she sat at the kitchen table for almost an hour reading them. Then she looked up at me with this expression I'd never seen before. "Dad, do you realize what this means?" Turns out the trust didn't just retain road ownership. It retained infrastructure rights. Every road, every utility corridor, water lines, access easements. The entire subdivision had been built on land the Whitmore Trust still controlled. Emma ran the numbers. 200 houses, 5 years of road usage, commercial access rates. The HOA owed the Whitmore Trust over $2 million in unauthorized road access. I remember staring at those numbers, thinking how strange life can be. Brenda thought she had been conquering territory. In reality, she had been building her empire on someone else's land. So instead of confronting her right away, we made a plan. One cold morning before sunrise, my friend Bob Christoff, a retired Marine who lived downstream, helped me install heavy steel barriers at every entrance to Riverside Estates. Each one carried a simple sign: private road, Whitmore Family Trust, authorized access only. At 7:30 that morning, my phone rang. Brenda, screaming, "You remove those barricades immediately or I'm calling the sheriff." I calmly told her to check the 1924 land grant. The silence on the other end of that call lasted a full 10 seconds. 8 minutes later, her Mercedes came screaming down the road. She jumped out wearing pajamas and fuzzy slippers trying to lift a 200-pound steel barrier. Bob calmly explained property law while she shouted. Then she ordered Dale to destroy the barriers with his backhoe. Bob politely informed him that damaging barriers on private property was a felony. Dale drove away, and that's when Brenda made her biggest mistake. She called the media. Her plan was simple: paint me as a crazy rancher holding innocent families hostage. But reporters started asking questions. Questions about HOA finances, about the road maintenance fees Brenda had been collecting for roads the HOA didn't actually own. $600,000 over 5 years. Within days, residents began investigating. A retired schoolteacher named Mrs. Henry uncovered the missing reserve fund. Contracts had been awarded to companies owned by Brenda's relatives. The numbers didn't lie. Then came a town meeting. 200 homeowners packed into the community center. Emma presented the original trust documents, the easement maps, the financial records, and finally a video recorded at one of Brenda's angry rallies where she accidentally admitted using HOA funds to fight me. That confession echoed through the room like thunder. The sheriff's deputy stepped forward, and right there in front of her entire neighborhood, Brenda Maxworth was arrested for fraud and embezzlement. Her husband lost his contractor license. 3 board members took plea deals. The HOA collapsed within weeks. In its place, the neighborhood formed a new property owners association, transparent, accountable, run by the residents themselves. Today, Riverside Estates pays the Whitmore Trust $50 a month per household for road access and maintenance. It's cheaper than the old HOA fees, and nobody's money disappears anymore. Property values actually went up once the corruption was gone. Emma graduated law school last year. Now she runs a legal clinic helping families fight abusive HOAs across Texas. Sometimes in the evenings, I sit on the porch and watch kids from Riverside ride their bikes down the same dirt trail my great-grandfather carved almost a century ago. The same trail Brenda tried to steal. And I think about something Sarah once told me. Power doesn't reveal character, it exposes it. Brenda believed she was protecting her community. In truth, she was protecting control over a kingdom she never owned. And the moment that illusion collapsed, everything else followed. 6 months after bulldozing my fence, she was sitting in a federal prison cell. The Whitmore Trust received over $1 million in settlements. But the real victory wasn't the money. It was watching a community finally learn the value of honesty and realizing something I wish I had understood years earlier. You don't defeat bullies by shouting louder than them. You defeat them by knowing the rules better than they do. Because patience and paperwork will beat arrogance every time. But I'm curious what you think. If someone tried to control your neighborhood the way Brenda did, would you fight back? Or would you assume the people in charge must know what they're doing? Let me know in the comments. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare like this one, share your story too. Sometimes the best way to stop abuse of power is simply telling the truth about it.